We bounce around to different kinds of topics here on the Morning Pit. We do different things. Sometimes it's very topical. There's breaking news. We react to that. Sometimes it's whatever's sort of going on. We react to or talk about the most recent game or preview the next upcoming game or, commitments and spring camp and all these different things. I mean, we bounce around. We have to do 5 of these a week, rarely 4 because, as you know, tomorrow is the Morning Pit mailbag. And we loosen up a little bit on that one. So it's really 4 topics a week that we got to come up with. And sometimes, when you're in the middle of the season, basketball season in particular, that's easy to do. Football season is not too tough, but you get into some of these off-season periods, even though Pitt is in spring camp right now, and certainly the transfer portal season is about to heat up for basketball. You get into some of these off-season periods, and sometimes you think about different topics and find different things to talk about. And I said something in the practice report, the spring camp report on Tuesday, that got me thinking a little bit. And I got thinking about a couple different topics, something I enjoy talking about from time to time. And I said, you know what? Let's bring that one back and have a little conversation. You've already seen the headline on this video or on the podcast if you're listening to the audio-only version. And so you kind of know where we're going with this. But I think it's fun to talk about what have been the best positions under Pat Narduzzi. The most productive positions, the most talented positions, the most accomplished positions under Pat Narduzzi. You've got 10 seasons of evidence here from 2015 through 2024. What are the 3 the 3 best positions under Narduzzi? And I got to be honest, I like pound for pound. Some of these might be a surprise, and I think we're going to list the top 3. But we'll have a little bit of debate maybe about the 3rd position because I think pound for pound, there's one that you can make a case for. It's not going to be the one I choose, but there's one that we can make a case for. And so we'll talk about that. So I think this will be fun. This is the kind of one where I listen to what I have to say and then give me your feedback either in the comments here on YouTube or on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And let's talk about it. What are the 3 best positions under Pat Narduzzi in the last 10 years at Pitt football under Pat Narduzzi? Let's talk about it right here on the Morning Pit. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Thursday here on the Morning Pit. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You should know that already. You see the website below, Panther-Lair.com. That's the Pitt site on the 24/7 Sports Network. We'd love to have you come and check it out. You missed our 75% off sale, which was it's one of our best sales probably that we're ever going to run, but we could still give you 50% off your first year at Panther-Lair.com to get the best Pitt coverage. All of our coverage of training camp, all of our coverage of spring camp, I guess they're in right now, I should say. In-depth practice reports, photos, slideshow, videos, inside info, all that kind of stuff. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and you can get it for 50% off right now. Of course, as the basketball transfer portal season starts heating up, there's going to be a lot to talk about as well. So you want to join the site and get it for a discount, 50% off. You can't beat that with a stick. So come and hang out at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. Take advantage of our special offer. We'd love it if you did. And, of course, what we always ask you to do, like this video and subscribe to YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you're only listening to this on the audio podcast, you say, Chris, I can't like and subscribe, so there's nothing I can do, and that's fine, but you should go over to YouTube and do it anyway. Like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And then while you're at it, just watch the video and listen to it that way. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right. 3 best positions under Pat Narduzzi. And we'll count them down 3 to 1. I think I've said before what I think the best position under Narduzzi has been consistently over the last 10 years. So maybe where we're going to end up at with number 1. I haven't really changed my thought. I think I even kind of mentioned it or referenced it on Tuesday in our spring camp report. So there's no real building suspense here, but I think it's interesting to have a conversation about number 3 on the list, because as I look, and I have a spreadsheet actually that I kind of keep running, and it's got all of the by position draft picks, All-Americans, all conference selections, first and second team. I didn't get into the third team and the honorable mention, just first or second team, all conference honors, and then any other major awards or notable items. And when I look at the sheet, obviously the positions where there are a lot of names are the ones that are going to stand out. So under Pat Narduzzi, there have been 6 offensive linemen drafted, all the way dating back to Dorian Johnson and Adam Bisnavati in 2017, Brian O'Neill the next year, Jimmy Morrissey in 2021, Carter Warren and Matt Gonsalves the last 2 years, 24 and 23. They've had 6 first-team All-ACC selections. They've had 4 second-team All-ACC selections. Dorian Johnson in 2016 was an All-American. So, I mean, a lot of success there, but there's a few caveats. One is that, half of those draft picks and 4 of those first-team All-ACC selections were guys who were drafted by Paul Christ, or recruited by Paul Christ. And, Dorian Johnson, Brian O'Neill, Adam Bisnavati all came in prior to Pat Narduzzi arriving. But more to the point, and I actually don't go so much for that, well, he did it with somebody else's players. You still got to coach him up. You still got to put him in a position to succeed. The reason I sort of set the offensive line aside and maybe don't put them in the top 3, even though they have all of these draft picks and all conference selections, 10 first and second team selections over the last 10 years, you have more. The reason I do that, I set it aside and maybe don't give it I don't put it in the top 3, because you have more of those guys playing. You have 5 on the field at all times, as opposed to other positions like quarterback. You only have 1 quarterback, and chances are you'll have 1 quarterback over the course of multiple years. I mean, really, under Pat Narduzzi, I think the only quarterbacks, there's only been 2 who've started at least 12 games, and it's Kenny Pickett and Nathan Peterman. You know what I mean? In 2017, obviously Peterman was the guy in 15 and 16. 2017 was, Max Brown and Ben DiNucci and finally Kenny. Pickett was the starter in 2018, 19, 20, and 21. You ate up a big chunk of years there. Keaton Slovis, I don't believe, started 12 games. He missed 1 game. I forget which game he didn't start. The Western Michigan game in 2022, and then didn't play the bowl game. So he only made 11 starts that year. 2023, you had the mixing and matching of Phil Dracovic and Christian Bayer and Nate Yarnell. And then this past year, Eli Holstein started like 10 games. So there have only been 2 quarterbacks under Pat Narduzzi who've started at least 12 games. And it's Pickett and Peterman. Now, both of those guys ended up being draft picks. One of them was an All-American. One of them was an All-Conference first-team selection, an ACC Player of the Year, an ACC Offensive Player of the Year. And so, by that measure, pound for pound, you could probably make a case that quarterback is the 3rd best position group. I'm not going to go that route, though. I think there's a lot of caveats you could throw in there. Those 2 guys started basically 6 out of Narduzzi's 10 seasons. And maybe if Eli Holstein ends up being really good and gets some all-conference honors, or maybe ends up being a draft pick, maybe we could start talking about how Pat Narduzzi has had pretty good luck with quarterbacks, or pretty good success with quarterbacks over the course of his time at Pitt. But we're not there yet. It's just, even though, like I say, pound for pound, the quarterbacks have been pretty good, it's not enough numbers-wise to put them in the top 3, if you ask me. I think the number 3 spot for best overall position under Pat Narduzzi is defensive end. And this one's a little bit weird because a lot of the success was kind of centered in a couple of seasons. So Pitt had 4 first-team all-conference selections at defensive end. Juan Price in 2015 and 16, and then Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones in 2020. So it's really 3 out of 10 seasons they had a first-team all-conference selection. 4 guys, 4 different selections, 3 players total. Those 3 were also drafted, which puts defensive end relatively high on the list of draft selections. Price didn't really make it in the league, but Jones and Weaver are still kicking, so they're doing well. Those guys were also both All-Americans in 2020. They also had 2 second-team All-Conference selections, Haba Baldonado in 2021, Patrick Jones in 2019. This position obviously has fallen off a little bit. Basically, since Jones and Weaver, Baldonado was fine in 2021, but they haven't really gotten that level of production over the last few years. We'll see if they can return to it now. But I think just on the strength of Jones, Weaver, and Price, and Baldonado I would throw in as well. Deslin Alexandra had some nice seasons in there. I think I would put defensive end above quarterback as an overall position at Pitt under Narduzzi. And so I'd put it actually number 3. And there's competition. I mean, there have been 3 running backs who have been drafted, 3 receivers have been drafted, including a first-round pick and a second-round pick. Because yes, I'm including Jordan Addison here because he made his, stock as a NFL draft pick, as an All-American, as a Biletnikoff Award winner in his season at Pitt. So I would include him. But I still give the edge to the defensive ends. They've had multiple players who were named consensus All-Americans as opposed to only one for the wide receivers. And so I give the nod there. Similarly, I give that nod to the defensive ends over the defensive tackles, who have had 2 draft picks, Jalen Twyman and Kalijah Cansey. Cansey, of course, was a unanimous All-American in 2022. And then both of those guys were first-team all-conference selections. There's just a little bit more happening with the defensive ends. A few more guys, well, one more guy, getting those all-conference honors and All-American and things like that than there were at defensive tackle. So I give the nod to the defensive ends as the number 3 best position group under Pat Narduzzi. Number 2, we're moving back in the defense, not to the linebackers, who incidentally have only had 2 first-team all-conference selections. One was Kyle Lewis this past year, and the other was Servassier Dennis in 2022. They've had 1 draft pick at linebacker under Pat Narduzzi. That's Servassier Dennis in 2023. 1 All-American at linebacker under Narduzzi. That was Lewis this past season. Not a very heralded group, although certainly trending in the right direction this year with Kyle Lewis coming off a great season last year, Rasheem Biles coming off a great season last year. They should have their best group of linebackers that they've had under Narduzzi. But that's for this year. That's not taking, that doesn't account for the last 10 years. And then I think if you look at the second best position group over the last 10 years, it's cornerback. They've had 5 cornerbacks drafted, and this was always one of the most remarkable stats to me. Pitt has had 5 cornerbacks drafted over the last 10 seasons, like 10 years of Pat Narduzzi. 5 corners have been drafted. Not one of those guys was a first-team all-conference selection. In 2019, Dane Jackson was a second-team all-conference selection, and MJ Devonshire in 2023 was a second-team all-conference selection, but none of those guys made the first team all-league. Avonte Maddox, who was drafted in 2018, Dane Jackson drafted in 2020, Jason Pinnock drafted the next year, Damari Mathis, a 4th-round pick in 2022, or MJ Devonshire getting drafted last year in the 7th round. None of them made first team all-conference. And it's a longer conversation we've had in the past and a discussion that I've had with Pitt players and coaches of whether, Pitt's corners don't get as much respect and credit as they should, probably for a variety of reasons. But they don't get, for one thing, I don't think they put up the big interception numbers that you see some of the other guys in the conference put up, and that probably would draw more attention. But I think they've been consistently some of the best corners in the league, and they end up putting guys in the NFL. And I think almost all those guys, Maddox, Jackson, Pinnock, Mathis, and Devonshire, I think they're all still, I'm not sure about Devonshire. I have to check and see where he is, but I think they're all still getting paid to play football, which I think speaks highly of their ability and their skills and, the players they were at Pitt and the players they went on to be in the NFL. Now, you could probably guess what the number 1 position is. You knew it already, probably coming into this, if you've listened to me at all over the last couple of years, it's safety. I think Pitt has been better at safety consistently than any other position on the team. And it goes all the way back to Jordan Whitehead. The star of Pat Narduzzi's first recruiting class was a defensive rookie of the year and the overall rookie of the year in the ACC in 2015. Was a second team all-league selection, all-ACC selection in 2016. He was a 4th-round draft pick after his junior season. He's still playing. You go to 2020, Damar Hamlin was a second-team all-conference selection. 2019, Paris Ford was a first-team all-ACC pick. Brandon Hill was a second-team all-ACC pick in 2021. The next year, Eric Hallett was a second-team selection. 2 years later, this past season, Donovan McMillan was a second-team selection. Got to think McMillan will be drafted, in which case he will be the 5th Pitt safety to be drafted under Pat Narduzzi, which ties it with the cornerbacks. Because they've had Whitehead, Hamlin, Hallett, and Hill all drafted since 2018. And the reason that so there have been more draft picks at corner. There have been more draft picks on the offensive line. Pound for pound, like I said, The quarterbacks are pretty interesting. Defensive ends and running backs and receivers, there have been 3 each of those guys drafted, only 4 safeties. So it's not that big of a separation there. But the thing that stands out to me about the safeties at Pitt under Pat Narduzzi is how consistent they have been. Like if you look at those all-conference selections, first or second team, Pitt had a first or second team all-ACC safety in 2016, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 24. So that's 6 out of Pat Narduzzi's 10 seasons. They've had a first or second team all-conference safety. It's just this consistent year after year of really high-level play. And those first couple years, it was pretty much Jordan Whitehead was the standout. But by the time you got to 2019, you had Damar Hamlin and Paris Ford back there. They weren't perfect. They certainly had their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. And they didn't always always have the most consistency in their individual play, but they were still pretty impactful. Paris Ford as a first team all ACC safety in 2019 I still say was one of the most exciting players I've watched at Pitt, or I've covered at Pitt in the 20 years I've been doing this. Anything could happen at any time. And sometimes it was going to be bad. But a whole lot of times it was good, and he made big explosive plays. He was exciting. But once you got to 2019, you had Hamlin and Ford back there. 2020, you had Hamlin and Ford again, and then Paris Ford quit the team in the middle of the season. Brandon Hill moved into that role, and so you had Hill and Hamlin. 2021 or 2020, 2021, you got Hill and Hallett back there, and they were a great duo for 2 years in 2021 and 22. 2023 and 24, you get Donovan McMillan and Javon McIntyre. Again, really good duo of players who played well and played at a high level. And then I think it's going to carry over to this year. McMillan's gone, but McIntyre's back. Cruz Brookins will play with him. Jesse Anderson is ready to step into a 2-deep role. Kavir Baines-Marquez came in as a transfer from UC Davis. I think he's going to be really solid in a 2-deep rotational role. Alan Bryant, a redshirt freshman. The coaches are really high on him. It's just continuing. And I don't think there's another position that's just consistently, year after year, been really good. Particularly, it's not 2015 through 2025, but you could go back to 2019. You know what I mean? And even in those years before that, you still had Jordan Whitehead, who's one of the best overall players to play for Pat Narduzzi. So I just think the safeties have been consistent over the course of the last 10 years and like really reliable, really good. You've had consistent pairings. You've had the same guys getting back there year after year and playing together and playing at a high level together. And it's been pretty, I have to think that's the best position. Do you disagree? You put the safeties at the top of the list. Would you put the corners behind him, the defensive ends? Would that be your top 3? That's what I'm going with. Would that be your top 3, or do you think I missed something that, some very obvious option that I should have included that I did not? Let me know in the comments here on YouTube or on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to check out the site, Panther-Lair.com, for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news that you can possibly handle. And then, of course, make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. We've got the Morning Pitt mailbag tomorrow. Looking forward to it. There's already great questions. I can't wait to answer those. So get your questions in on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. We'll answer as many as we can tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching the video today. I hope it's been a great week. We're almost to the end of it, folks. Enjoy your Thursday. I'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt mailbag right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.